Anyway, back to the research. Here's a headline. A globalist kingpin calls for invasion of Venezuela. Who could this globalist kingpin be? It's a man called Richard Haas, pronounced differently in my house. He is the head of the Council on Foreign Relations, Council on Foreign Relations being an organization created in 1921 and an offshoot, a satellite organization of a secret society in London called the Round Table being the very vehicle for which the Balfour Declaration was made during the First World War, which led eventually to the creation of the State of Israel. And of course, Israel is massively behind this neocon. Well, not massively behind the neocon cabal. It is the neocon cabal. And so you have the neocon, John Bolton, who is Trump's national security advisor, who's driving the attack on Venezuela and on Iran and anyone else that Israel wants to target. And people say, well, why would Israel want to target Venezuela? Well, they've put their man in Brazil, far right guy in Brazil, and what Israel is doing is not only about that sliver of land in the Middle East. It's much bigger, and it's not Israel, of course. It's those that control Israel. The great majority of people in Israel are actually victims of this group, not perpetrators of it, which is why an Israeli radio media host who interviewed me recently was telling me the desperate straits that survivors of the concentration camps in Germany are in financially, in terms of financial economic deprivation in Israel, because these people couldn't care less about Jewish people. They're just a way of avoiding legitimate exposure and criticism by using the anti-Semitic card, not to protect Jewish people, but protect themselves. Anyway, you would not be surprised, therefore, that when this Venezuela thing kicked off, and of course they've been trying to get rid of the regime in Venezuela for a long time, not just under Maduro now, but under Hugo Chavez before, the person they put in is a bloke called Elliott Abrams. Elliott Abrams is an ultra Zionist neocon who oversaw mass murder by far-right US-supported regimes in Central America. Also, this man, Richard Haas, is an ultra-Zionist neocon. So, you can see the way it's going. And if Richard Haas wants it, if Elliott Abrams wants it, and if John Bolton wants it, it is always, but always appalling for humanity and most extreme in its appalling nature for those they are directly targeting, in this case, the people of Venezuela. So what they do is they impose sanctions on Venezuela, and they increase them. They create economic problems, and then they say, we're going to send in aid to help the people of Venezuela, who we care so much about. We care about them so much, we put this Guaido little boy in short trousers in place as the interim president to represent our interests. As soon as he's surplus to requirements, we'll get rid of him as well. So what they're trying to do is to run this narrative, which of course people like CNN and the other prostitutes are pushing and helping to promote, and that is that the kind America. Oh, heart, United States government, heart. Oh, you don't know nothing if you don't see the heart of the American government. That they're sending aid in to Venezuela. And these nasty people in Venezuela who couldn't care less about their people, they are stopping it coming in. Of course, what the government is doing is accepting aid from Russia, from China, and other places. And there was a film on DavidIcke.com, posted on DavidIcke.com the other day, when a journalist, an alternative journalist, of course, went to Venezuela with a film, with a camera, and showed that there was abundant food in the markets, and it's not like we are being told it is. There's a CNN reporter in the film clip talking to camera, telling his masters what he has to tell them if the check's going to arrive at the end of the month. That Venezuelans they have nothing. They have nothing. They don't even have toothpaste. And this reporter was Max Blumenthal was standing next to a large pile of toothpaste for sale on a market stall in Venezuela. So the pattern is constant, and there's no pushback apart from the alternative media. There's no pushback against it because the right and the left agree in America, the Republicans, the Democrats, that and knowing the difference between who's far right and who's not there is now getting very difficult because they're both proposing fascistic policies. But anyway, there's no pushback, and what we've had, is Bernie Sanders, who's in his 70s now. I mean, Bernie Sanders, come on, man. How old do you have to be before you stop serving the system? Bernie Sanders is the system socialist. I'm a socialist. I believe in good things for people. But whenever it comes to bombing people in other countries, he's kind of not so passionate about good things for people, because he supported all these wars, and now he's come out and he has given the White House narrative on Venezuela. I mean, there are some pathetic people in American politics, but Bernie Sanders has got to be right up there. What a purveyor of hypocrisy that man is. No, he's a socialist. He's going to save America. Bloody hell! So it's very predictable what's going on, and I'm not saying that the Maduro government is perfect or anything like perfect, but that is for Venezuelans to sort out, not American neocons that want their oil and want control of the entirety of South America. That's why they've got control now of Colombia. That's why they've got control of Brazil through this far-right president. And they want to pick off the whole of South America. So, watch Bolivia on the list at some point. Now, Israel and this whole situation regarding censorship is just got to ludicrous levels. But before I get into that, this is a story. MI6 chief makes secret Israel visit to discuss nuclear program. Okay. Now, if you saw that headline, and you've been researching this, and I'm not even researching it in any depth because it's hardly a secret, it's just claimed to be a secret, you might think that the MI6 chief has gone to Israel to discuss Israel's nuclear program. Oh, yeah, that'll be the bloody day. No, the MI6 chief has gone to Israel to discuss Iran's nuclear program. the claim that Iran is developing nuclear weapons. The fact that Israel has long had a massive nuclear arsenal is not up for discussion, because everyone agrees in the establishment of every country that you just don't talk about that. So America has this, well, it is laughable, really. I mean, it's tragic, but it's laughable at the same time. America has this policy, agreed policy, written down policy, which is agreed by successive presidents, no matter what party they are, because they all come from the one-party state anyway. And it says, it's basically, you don't tell and we won't ask. So Israel doesn't answer questions about its nuclear arsenal, although anyone with a brain cell on active duty knows it's got a massive one. And America, that goes on about the dangers of this of nuclear war and nuclear programs, they don't ask. And of course, Iran, or Israel rather, Israel being one of the most trigger-happy countries on earth, compared with its size, the most trigger-happy country on earth, and it's got nuclear weapons. But that's not a problem. Why? Because that which controls Israel controls the United States government. Now, this MI6 chief, a bloke called Alex Younger, he met the Mossad chief, Yossi Cohen. And Mossad is one of the Earth's most disgusting organizations. It makes the CIA look like a sissy. And you know, the power of Mossad and the potential behavior of Mossad, given past events, does seem to, I'm sure, concentrate the mind of politicians around the world not to criticize Israel too much, if at all. So the head of Britain's foreign spy agency, MI6, has reportedly made a secret visit. Secret visit to see the secret nuclear program to Tel Aviv, and exchange views with Israeli intelligence officials on Iran's nuclear activities. Mr. Younger, I've come to exchange views. Mr. Cohen, you mean you do what we say? Mr. Younger, yeah. Basically the dynamic there. Israel's Channel 13 News reported on Friday that MI6 chief Alex Younger travelled to Israel, met with Yossi Cohen. The TV report claimed that Iran has recently renewed its production of centrifuges and is gearing up for the renewal of uranium enrichment within the provisions of the 2015 nuclear deal, officially named the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which of course Trump, under orders from Israel, that nuclear deal they had, which had calmed everything down with Iran, was deleted by Trump. And of course, why? Because of what I've just said. That deal had calmed everything down with Iran. Iran is on the list of regime changes in Tel Aviv and Washington. So they don't want it calming down. They want a reason for regime change. And that's what that is all about. And you know how the Alex Youngers of this world, and even, yes, the Donald Trumps and all these people, how they go to bed at night. And I'm sure they do, and I'm sure they sleep like a baby. But how they do is beyond me completely, because they must have no self-awareness and no self-respect to allow themselves to be dictated to like this in such a blatant fashion. It's pathetic. Now, of course, what you don't do is threaten to expose the truth, or indeed, even worse, expose the truth about Israel's far-right government. And this was something learned very clearly this week by an Israeli news presenter. You know, hands up to her, really, because, to do what she did took enormous courage, because she would have known what the reaction was going to be, and it was. Because the people most abused by the ultra-Zionist networks that control Israel are Jewish people that criticize in any way the ultra-Zionist control of Israel and what they do and what it means for the people in general. Because, see, this is an important, really important point. We hear Netanyahu all the time, and we hear these people in charge all the time. We very, very rarely hear, if you notice, from the rank and file general population of Israel. Many, many, many of which have a completely different view of the world and their government than we hear in the media. And we hear overwhelmingly from the extremists in government and from the extremists in the population. But the great majority who are not, they're not heard, because you mustn't hear from people who give a totally different view to the shrill psychopaths speaking through the microphones, because then people might realize that the shrill psychopaths speaking through the microphones do not speak and do not represent the great majority of Jewish people and Israelis in Israel. And so when one of those pops up and speaks the truth, then you have to target them even more, because your anti-Semitism industry, your protection racket, to use anti-Semitism to stop legitimate exposure of the far-right government in Israel, it's much more difficult to label a Jewish person as anti-Semitic. They try, of course, because they're desperate, but it's more difficult. So they get attacked even more. So what this Israeli news presenter has said, Oshrat Kotler, and like I say, hats off to this lady for what she said. And there are so many brave, courageous, decent Jewish Israelis who do stand up and speak out. But of course they are marginalized, they are kept as much as possible off the airwaves, and they are attacked personally by the psychopaths. This is the story. A news anchor who has blamed the Israeli occupation of Palestinian lands for turning regime troops into animals has defended her comments despite having received death threats from thousands. Israeli Channel 13 TV anchor Oshrat Kotler had last week denounced the mistreatment of Palestinians in Israeli custody, following a piece aired on the channel about 5 Israeli soldiers indicted for beating 2 handcuffed and blindfolded Palestinians, a father and his 15-year-old son. According to the indictment, the father was hospitalized for 3 days after sustaining multiple broken ribs, a severely broken nose, and subdermal internal bleeding, in other words, around his stomach. The son also suffered a number of wounds to his head and significant swelling on his face. Because, of course, these troops are macho men. They are psychopaths who have the power because of the imposition by the Israeli government psychopaths, and so they have the freedom to act like psychopaths. So after the report was aired, Kotler said, "We send children to the army, to the occupied territories, and get back animals. That is the result of the occupation." Her remarks infuriated extremist Israeli politicians, including Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And Benjamin Netanyahu, he has an alarm next to his bed, Not a lot of people know this. He has an alarm next to his bed, and it goes off every 5 minutes so that he can wake up and be infuriated and outraged in a constant sequence all night, as he is, of course, infuriated and outraged in a constant sequence all day. His body has become totally addicted and dependent on the emotional chemicals produced by this state of being outraged and infuriated. So he has to have his fix every 5 minutes. So, that's why the alarm clock keeps going off. What are you infuriated about now? What are you outraged now, Mr. Netanyahu? I don't know, but I'll think of something in a minute. I'm outraged by that question. And also outraged, again, they go to the same clock shop, is the Education Minister, Naftali Bennett, who is so far right, he meets himself coming back. On Saturday, Kotler said she stood by her comments despite having been flooded with death threats, according to the Times of Israel. Well, good on her, because what usually happens, and we'll see an example of that in a minute, in Britain, is that when people say something that's actually true, or at least a valid opinion that people have a right to have, then they get the tidal wave of abuse, and then they apologise. Worst thing you can do is apologise. Don't apologise to bullies. You laugh at them and then shout louder. So you deal with bullies. Oh, I'm ever so sorry, Mr. Bully. I won't say what I think again. Oh, I think I will. Anyway, Kotler accused Israeli politicians of taking cynical advantage. What? Netanyahu? Taking cynical advantage? Oh, wash your mouth out. Of her comments and taking them out of context in the midst of an election campaign. She said, "I'm sorry if I hurt anyone with my words, but I cannot see the price we pay through our children for the reality of controlling another nation." As she appeared to fight back tears, she referred to Palestinians in this way: "We have lived this reality for 52 years. I do not have a magic solution. I'm not a politician." Well, if you were a politician, you certainly wouldn't have a magic solution. Anyway, what is happening in Israel, of course, is that it's a mind program. And you talk to Israelis who've been through it, and they'll tell you, those that are self-aware enough to see it. All through their formative years as kids, they are programmed. I'm going to sneeze, I think. Excuse me. Oh, dear. There you go. They used to say, bless you, They say bless you when you sneeze. Apparently long ago, they thought that sneezing was ejecting evil spirits. Maybe I've just ejected John Bolton. What do you think? Anyway, what happens in Israel is that the children in their formative years go through this extraordinary programming. I mean, I feel so sad for them. The programming says that the rest of the world hates you. Therefore, you need to be protected. And we, the government and the military, are there to protect you. So you must give your power away to us because we need to protect you from all the world that hates you. So, I mean, what a thing to ditch on kids as they're growing up. The other part of the programming is to demonize Palestinians, basically as vermin. And then through the conscription, apart from those really brave and extraordinarily admirable young Israelis who refused to join the Israeli Defense Forces, Israeli attack forces, people go into the army. Now, not all of them, of course not all of them, but by now, some of them have reached a point of such hatred and contempt for Palestinians because of the programming that this sort of thing then happens because they don't see them as they impose their military will on Palestinians. They don't see them as human. They don't see them as anything more than animals. Not that the animals should be treated like that either. And this is where the dynamic comes from. And this is what Kotler here is pointing out, that you send young people into the army and some of them, not all of them, some of them come back as animals. And this is because of the psychopathic perceptual programming that goes on, and to which a serious number concede their perceptions to, and thus become psychopaths when maybe many weren't when they went in. So that's it was a very interesting story this week, and good on that lady for having the guts to stand up against the tyranny that is the Israeli government and military and Mossad, because they're all one unit, really.
Every single event that we've done anywhere in the world, there's been certain groups that have contacted venues, made outrageous libelous claims about what David's going to speak about, and have in many cases got venues to cancel on us.
They tell the organisers that I'm going to go on the stage and I'm going to say a stream of racist things, none of which I have ever said, none of which am I ever going to say. What then happens, staggeringly, is that instead of coming to you and saying, well, these people have said you're going to say this, you're going to say that, what's going on? They pull the event. And we hear about the event we've been organising for months being cancelled. We hear about it in the media.
In Germany alone, for example, I've been in touch with over 70 venues, and we've still never managed to pull off a Germany show. And there's a venue that we had in Berlin, which to this day, nigh on well over a year, have never actually contacted me to tell me the event's been cancelled. I found out from a German newspaper when they published a story about it.
And my website is blocked in schools and universities and colleges. It's blocked in government departments and government agencies. And here's me, one person, who was supposed to be this great nutter, and the system is desperate to silence what I'm putting out and to stop as many people as possible ever hearing it. Why?